Marcus Chen had 15 years in cybersecurity, worked for Google and Facebook, led security teams for Fortune 500 companies, and held multiple certifications in ethical hacking and network defense. When his company, a global fintech startup valued at $800 million, hired Paulo Reyes as a junior security analyst from Manila, Marcus reviewed his resume with skepticism. Bachelor's degree from University of the Philippines, no prestigious certifications, work experience at small Philippine companies Marcus had never heard of. During Paulo's first security team meeting, Marcus outlined their enterprise security architecture: advanced threat detection systems, AI-powered intrusion prevention, zero-trust network protocols, security operations center, monitoring 24/7. Paulo listened carefully, then asked a question. "Mr. Chen, I noticed the architecture has many layers of defense at the perimeter, but what about lateral movement prevention if someone gets inside?" Marcus smiled with the patience reserved for junior staff who didn't understand enterprise security. "Paulo, our perimeter defense is state-of-the-art. We have threat intelligence feeds, behavioral analytics, machine learning detection. The probability of someone penetrating our perimeter is extremely low. We focus resources where the threat is greatest at the boundary." Paulo nodded, but seemed uncertain. "In Philippines, we learned different approach. Where I worked, we had small budget, couldn't afford expensive perimeter tools, so we focused on assuming breach planning for what happens when attacker gets inside, not if. Like sari-sari store that assumes shoplifters will come, so watches how they move inside, not just at door." Marcus chuckled. "That's an interesting analogy, but enterprise security is different from a corner store. We have resources to prevent breaches, not just react to them. Your previous experience was resource-constrained security. Here, we do it properly." What Marcus didn't understand was that Paulo's resource-constrained experience had taught him something valuable. Working for Philippine companies that couldn't afford expensive enterprise tools, Paulo had learned to think like an attacker, to understand how breaches actually happened in the real world, to build detection and response systems using creativity rather than expensive products. He'd dealt with actual sophisticated attacks against Philippine businesses, Chinese state-sponsored groups, North Korean hackers, ransomware, gangs, all targeting companies with minimal security budgets. He'd learned to win fights where he was outmatched in resources, but not in understanding of attacker behavior. 3 months into Paulo's employment, on a Friday evening when most staff had left, the attack began. It started with a spear-phishing email to an executive assistant, carefully crafted to look like a legitimate vendor invoice. She clicked. The malware installed silently, using a zero-day exploit that bypassed the antivirus. The attackers had penetrated the perimeter Marcus was so confident about. For the next 6 hours, they moved laterally through the network, slowly, carefully, using legitimate credentials they'd stolen, looking like normal employee activity. They were professionals, a ransomware group that had hit dozens of companies, demanding millions in crypto. By Saturday morning, they'd located the company's database servers and file storage systems. They deployed ransomware across the network simultaneously. Within minutes, 85% of the company's systems were encrypted, servers locked, databases inaccessible, backup systems compromised. The ransom note appeared on every screen: $15 million in Bitcoin within 48 hours, or all data would be permanently destroyed and leaked to competitors. Marcus received the emergency call at 6 a.m. He rushed to the office, his security team assembling in crisis mode. The situation was catastrophic. Their advanced perimeter defenses had been bypassed. The threat detection systems had missed the lateral movement. The attackers had owned their network for hours before anyone noticed. "How did they get in?" Marcus demanded, his hands shaking as he reviewed logs. His senior analysts worked frantically. "Looks like a phishing compromise. Then they used stolen credentials to move laterally. They were inside for 6 hours before deployment. Our behavioral analytics didn't flag it because they moved slowly and mimicked normal user patterns." Marcus felt sick. Everything he'd built, all the expensive tools and sophisticated architecture, had failed. The company's entire operation was paralyzed. Customer data was at risk. The ransom deadline was ticking. Paulo, who'd come in despite being junior staff, stood quietly watching the chaos. Then he spoke. "Mr. Chen, can I look at something?" Marcus barely glanced at him, focused on his senior team trying to assess the damage. "Paulo, not now. This is a critical incident. We need experienced." Paulo interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Chen, I've seen this attack pattern before. In Philippines, I dealt with this same ransomware group. They hit 3 companies I worked with. I know how they operate. Can I please look at the network logs? Marcus, desperate and out of options, nodded. Paulo sat at a terminal and began analyzing network traffic patterns with a speed that surprised Marcus. He wasn't using the expensive security tools. He was using basic command line utilities, grep searches, manual log analysis techniques that looked primitive but showed deep understanding of network behavior. After 20 minutes, Paulo looked up. Mr. Chen, the ransomware deployed from these 17 servers simultaneously, but I found something. There's one system there still connected to a command and control channel they left open to monitor encryption progress and receive payment confirmation. It's here. He pointed at traffic that Marcus's expensive analytics had missed. If we can trace this connection and move fast, we might be able to stop them before they finish encrypting everything and possibly recover the encryption keys. Marcus's senior analyst shook his head. That's a long shot. These groups don't leave their C2 channels vulnerable. And we don't have tools too. Paulo interrupted again. In Philippines, we couldn't afford expensive forensic tools. We learned to do this manually. I can try to penetrate their C2 server if you authorize me. It's risky, maybe illegal depending on jurisdiction, but it's the only chance. Every protocol Marcus knew said don't let a junior analyst attempt something this critical. But looking at the ransom note, the encrypted systems, the 48-hour deadline, he made a decision. Do it. Whatever you need, you have authorization. For the next 8 hours, Paulo worked with intensity Marcus had never seen. He wasn't using sophisticated hacking tools or automated exploit frameworks. He was using techniques learned from defending Philippine companies on tiny budgets, understanding attacker psychology, recognizing patterns, exploiting mistakes that automation missed. He found vulnerabilities in the attacker's C2 infrastructure not through expensive tools, but through careful observation of how they'd set up their system. The ransomware group had made a critical mistake. They'd reused infrastructure from previous attacks. And Paulo recognized the patterns from his work in the Philippines. He found a misconfiguration in their server, exploited it, and gained access to their command system. Inside, he found the encryption keys for the ransomware and evidence of their identity. But he found something else. They were preparing to attack 2 other companies next week. Marcus watched over Paulo's shoulder as the junior analyst navigated the attacker's systems with skills that shouldn't exist in someone with his limited experience. How did you learn this? Marcus asked quietly. Paulo didn't look up from his screen. In Philippines, Mr. Chen, we got attacked constantly. Chinese groups, North Korean hackers, ransomware gangs. We had no money for expensive tools, no big security teams. So we learned to think like attackers because we couldn't afford to just block them at perimeter. We had to understand how they think, how they make mistakes, how to turn their tools against them. Like sari-sari store owner who can't afford security cameras, so learns to watch people's hands, their eyes, their behavior. Different method, but maybe more effective because it understands human side of hacking, not just technical side. By evening, Paulo had not only recovered the encryption keys, but had documented enough evidence to help law enforcement identify the ransomware group. Marcus's team began decrypting systems. Within 24 hours, they'd recovered 95% of encrypted data without paying the ransom. The attack that should have destroyed the company had been stopped by the amateur junior analyst from Manila. When the crisis ended and systems were restored, Marcus called an all-hands security team meeting. Paulo expected to be praised quietly, maybe promoted eventually. Instead, Marcus did something that shocked everyone. I need to make a confession, Marcus told the team. When we hired Paulo, I looked at his background and saw someone without prestigious credentials, without experience at major American companies, without expensive certifications. I assumed his security knowledge was basic, amateur, not relevant to our sophisticated environment. I was completely wrong. Paulo just saved this company from catastrophic ransomware, using skills I dismissed as unsophisticated. He penetrated attacker infrastructure that our million-dollar security tools couldn't even detect. He did it using techniques learned from resource-constrained security work in the Philippines that taught him things my 15 years in Silicon Valley never did. Marcus continued, his voice serious. Paulo asked in his first meeting about lateral movement prevention. I dismissed it, saying our perimeter was too strong to worry about. He was right. I was wrong. The attackers got through our sophisticated perimeter easily, and we had no effective detection for lateral movement because I'd focused all our resources on boundary defense. Paulo's sari-sari store analogy was exactly right. We should have assumed breach and watched internal behavior, not just built walls. That's what his experience taught him that mine didn't. The meeting ended with Paulo being promoted to senior security architect and tasked with redesigning the company's security approach. But more importantly, Marcus did something that took real courage. He published a blog post titled, "What Silicon Valley Security Can Learn from Resource-Constrained Defense in the Philippines." He detailed how companies in developing countries, facing sophisticated attacks with minimal budgets, developed security approaches that sometimes exceeded expensive enterprise solutions, how focusing on attacker behavior and assuming breach was more effective than relying on perimeter tools, how understanding the human psychology of hacking mattered as much as technical controls. The post went viral in cybersecurity circles. Some American security professionals criticized it as romanticizing inadequate security, but others, particularly those who'd worked internationally, recognized truths that necessity and constraints sometimes taught security lessons that unlimited budgets couldn't. Within a year, Paulo's approach, which he'd learned defending Philippine companies with tiny security budgets, was being taught in security training programs worldwide. The concept of assume breach and defense in depth, focused on lateral movement, became standard practice rather than something dismissed as pessimistic. Marcus remained head of security, but Paulo became his most trusted advisor and eventual partner in a security consulting firm they founded together. Their approach combined Silicon Valley's resources with Manila's street-smart security tactics, creating defense systems that didn't just rely on expensive tools but understood attacker psychology and behavior. And Marcus kept a framed screenshot in his office, the moment Paulo had found the attackers' C2 channel that all their expensive security tools had missed, with a note below it that Marcus wrote, "To the amateur Filipino analyst who saved an $800 million company using techniques learned from defending Philippine businesses I'd never heard of. Turns out, the most sophisticated security doesn't come from the most expensive tools. It comes from those who've had to win security fights they couldn't afford to lose, with resources they didn't have, against attackers who didn't care about their constraints." Paulo taught me that sometimes the best cybersecurity looks like a sari-sari store owner, watching shoplifters, less about the cameras and more about understanding human behavior.